before somebody chooses to retire, the question I always ask them is, what are you retiring to? And make that choice so that people they really got a reason to stay engaged so that they're not sedentary, because typically that does not play very well in terms of long-term longevity.
It doesn't.
Excellent. Excellent. Okay.
Well, I mean, I have some slides and we can get started, and I want to make this interactive. So I want people to ask questions all along the way. Don't feel like you're interrupting me, because this is not a lecture. This is a conversation.
Yes, it's a conversation. And would you like me to give you a formal introduction of your bio, being that this is being recorded as part of the welcome?
Yeah, some people don't know me. I know a lot of the people here, which is great. You know, we've known them for a
But
while.
some that don't. And I like to say to everyone who's on this call, we have unintended, I may tell you, because I wasn't quite sure that everyone would show up. And this is a wonderful thing that you did, and a tribute to our commitment to each other in terms of our friendships and our allyship. That's actually part of our mission with having put this together. That there are lots of resources here in this group. I want to tell you, Sandy Webster, her presentation that she did about being part of a board and creating an advisory board and so on and so forth is amazing. Tara Gilvar as part of the reinvention piece. And I've often looked at the fact for myself, if I'm not always in a place of reinventing, redoing, and looking to change and morph and modify and get better. Like I'm always saying, I'm a work in progress, and I hope that never changes. I will always be a work in progress. And for Doug Brown, all the wisdom, and Barry as well, the wisdom that you bring. I mean, look at what you've done in terms of assisting people with writing books and being an author. I mean, there's just so much talent, and there's so much I'm gonna say amazing. Is that a word? That's here. And Doug,
Andrew's my poster child.
Just what I know. You introduced me to Andrew, and it was one of the best introductions ever that I've had, in my professional career. And Susanna, for all the years that we've changed and grown together, it's been amazing. And Pauline, I welcome you, and I know that you are on your own path as well, which is great. And Joseph, I look forward to getting to know you, and I thank you for joining us today. And Margie as well. Even though you're off camera, it's fine that you're listening. I look forward to the same. And Doc and Helen, that goes without saying. That it's wonderful to work with you as well. And I have Dr. Lorraine Maita, who absolutely does need no introduction once you get to know her. But I'm going to read her bio. She's amazing, and she will absolutely take us to a different place and time today with learning how to live longer, better quality life years. Dr. Lorraine Maita is a recognized and award-winning holistic, integrative, and anti-aging physician. She transforms people's mood, energy, weight, and hormones in a safe, effective, and natural way. Her approach is to get to the root cause of what is making you feel less than optimal. She can heal and live a rich, full life and assist you with that. Your treatment is personalized as you are a unique individual. Dr. Maita served as Chief Medical Officer and Medical Director for 3 Fortune 100 companies and was the advisory team member for WOR Radio, Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life, on the #1 news talk radio station in New York metropolitan area on AM 970, The Answer. Salmon Media, New York powerhouse in the news and stimulating talk. She's the founder of Vibrance for Life Wellness Institute and has a private practice in New Jersey. And then her website will make sure that we have that all included as well, all your contact information and the follow-up email to everyone. So thank you. Dr. Lorraine Maita, the floor is yours. And I want to welcome everyone. And as Dr. Maita had mentioned, this is interactive. Please feel free to take yourself off mute and ask questions all along the way. Thank you.
I'll share my screen and let me get that going. 5 runs through life. Why is it not doing it? There we go. All right, so so we want to live to 100, but we don't want to live to 100 being frail and disabled. You know, people feel, I've been doing this anti-aging medicine for probably over 20 years, and I'm way over the hill now. But I have to tell you, some of my lab tests show that I'm not. But what I wanted, my goal is to help people not to age gracefully and to not have to fear being hospitalized, getting frail, getting disabled, losing their sight, losing their hearing, losing their vision. People want to grow old, but they want to grow old with a lot of vitality and vigor. And that's what the goal is. So I want first people to understand what the aging process is, what's happening inside of our body. You know, we burn, meaning inflammation. All of you have had some experience, I'm sure, with being inflamed, where you have red, you could be swollen, you could have pain, you could have redness. That's inflammation. Inflammation is like a slow burn. It could be slow or it could be pretty fast. Glycation is a fancy word for sugar binding to protein. So that's why there's a picture of a ham there. If you put sugar on a ham, which is protein, you put it in the oven, it forms a nice crust. Now, if we have excess sugar floating around in our bodies, it is going to bind to protein and form a crust. We don't want that kind of crust in our brain, in our nervous system, in our kidneys, in our nerves, in any of the parts of our bodies, because it's going to change the structure and function. We rust, you know. I used to say you can get rusty, crusty, fat, and inflamed. That's how we age. Rusting is oxidation, and oxidation just occurs just from breathing, eating, exercise. It's constantly happening all the time. That's why there's a big push for antioxidants, because our cells will just start to disintegrate just like metal will when it rusts. And we start to have decline of our neurological system, our hormone system. The cells don't communicate as well. And our muscles start getting weak and we lose muscle tone. So the key to start this is finding what your vulnerable spot is. Some of you already know. You had a DEXA scan, a DEXA bone scan. I know you might have osteoporosis. You can see and feel that your muscles aren't the same and don't have the strength. Many of you may have had, you know, cholesterol levels done or a heart scan, and others might be finding, gee, my memory is not as sharp. So it's easy to get overwhelmed with, oh, I have to do this, that, the other thing, and there's a long laundry list. But first, the way to start is to just pick out what's bothering you the most or what you've noticed and work on that first, because you'll find that the same metabolic processes that we discussed affects everything. So if you change it for one system, it may have a domino effect and change it for all. And a lot of people think they're at the fate of their genes. You know, some people say, well, I have good genes or I have bad genes. Well, that's not necessarily the case, because genes are like light switches. You have to turn them on or turn them off. And you know, your lifestyle is going to determine, are you turning on the good genes or the bad genes? Are you turning off the good genes or the bad genes? And, you know, there are actually some tests that do that. And I'm actually, you know, happy to say that some of the things that I have been implementing over the years work, because I did a true age test, which looks at the DNA methylation, which is a fancy term for the light switch. It's what turns the genes on and off. And I was, you know, I probably was at the worst shape during this pandemic when I did this test, and I thought, oh, I'm going to fail it miserably. Well, you know, a lot of things go on under the surface that you're not really aware of. But what I was surprised to see is I'm 9 years younger than my biological age. I'm 9 years younger than my chronological age. My immune system is 22 years younger. I have long telomeres. Telomeres are the parts, the little caps on your DNA that allow it to keep replicating. So once they get too short, you can't regenerate or heal your cells. So my telomeres are nice and long. So I hopefully will be able to continue to walk the talk. But I just want people to know you're not at the fate of your genes. Your lifestyle can determine how your genes express. They can sit there, you can have a bad gene, but you don't have to turn it on. It's your
That's
life.
better for you.
Yeah.
Is this reversible? Like once you start to uh, disintegrate, for a lack of a better word, is this process reversible?
Yes, you can rejuvenate. That's the whole purpose. You know, your cells can rejuvenate. If you, I used to say I use a vitality formula. You give your body what it needs, you take away what's hindering it, and you multiply the things that are actually working for you. And part of the process is determining, what is your weakest spot, and how do you go about it. So most things are just pretty common sense, and you're going to find that the centurions, you didn't have to do a lot of testing. Sometimes when people don't know and they don't improve with the changes, that's when I get deeper, and I'll go into many more testing. But yes, it is reversible. It is reversible, and that's the beauty. I mean, you can read the testimonials on my website. Sometimes I cry when I read them, because I see that people came in completely depleted, and they couldn't walk, and they couldn't think, and they had brain fog, and they were weak, and they were tired, and now they got their lives back. So absolutely. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing this if I couldn't make a difference, because it's a lot of work on my part. But I love it, and I wouldn't give it up for anything, because you can slow the process. And that was really where I thought I was doing badly during, it was mostly during the last months of the pandemic. But I did some testing, and it was like, wow, because I live what I'm speaking to you about. So one of the other processes that makes you age faster is inflammation. And think of it as anything with an itis: gingivitis, gastritis, arthritis. But inflammation can exhibit as mental fog. It can exhibit as pain. It could be fatigue. It could be redness. It could be swelling. But inflammation is the root cause of almost every illness. And there are things that I'm going to get into that you can do to decrease inflammation. And they're simple. The things are simple. Anti-inflammatory diet. So in the Paleolithic times, if people had omega-6 fats and omega-3 fats in a ratio of 2:1. You start to get ill when the ratio goes to 4:1. But most of the standard American diet is a ratio of 10 to 20:1. So it's no wonder why we're inflamed. And omega-6 fats, for those who may not know, are fats that are solid at room temperature. Meat, poultry, dairy. It could also be the more dangerous are trans fats, hydrogenated oils. These, you need some, because you need to have inflammation. Inflammation is what fights illness. Inflammation helps you heal. But when the inflammatory process gets out of control and starts eating away at you, or burning you up, that's when you really need to take a little bit more drastic measures. And it's not so drastic. So you cut down on the inflammatory fats and you add more anti-inflammatory fats. And I call them fats that flow, because they're fats that can be made into an oil. Fish, olives, avocados, nuts, seeds, and their oils. And then I usually always recommend people take some fish oil, unless there's a bleeding tendency, because the fish oil is going to try to help bring you back in balance. So anti-inflammatory diet is going to decrease inflammation, which is the root cause of illness.
Dr. Maida, I have a comment real quick.
Sure.
I remember calling you up about, it had to be about a year ago. It was during the pandemic, because we're almost 2 years into this already. And I had lab work done 6 months apart. And olive oil literally changed my triglyceride level.
Yeah.
Literally. I had I had like really low triglycerides just from like a consumption olive oil, pretty much breakfast, lunch, and dinner incorporated in my meal plan. And then I went, and the doctor's like, well, that's impossible. This is my primary care. And then I changed it a little bit, and my triglycerides went up, and then went back to it again, because it literally, there's proof in the pudding.
There is proof in the pudding. And I remember having a gentleman come in to me, and he was on his last rope. He was put on so many medications because his blood sugar was out of control. His blood pressure was at a level where I was ready to get an ambulance to take him to the hospital. His cholesterol was out of control. And I said, I was a little nervous about it, because he was so bad off that I wasn't sure I was going to be able to turn it around quickly. So I put him on a detoxification and elimination diet and changed and some supplements. And when he came back, I was just, I had to check 3 or 4 times. Was this the same guy? His blood pressure went down, his weight went down, his blood sugar went down. He was off all medications and his diabetes was under control with no medications. It was all because of the dietary changes and some of the supplements that we gave him. So yes, you can change things. And I'm so happy. Thank you for leaving that comment.
Salmon and
Yes,
salad is known as the Mediterranean diet because salmon has the highest concentration of omega.
Exactly. Exactly.
But what about people like me who are allergic to fish and seafood? What do you substitute for that?
Okay, there's chia seeds have omega-3 fats, quinoa have omega-3 fats. There's I would give a supplement DHA from algae. You can get there, you can get more omega-3s from nuts and seeds as well. They're more monounsaturated, and olive oil. So it's cutting down. I mean, I eat meat, but I eat small portions. I'll eat more of the other fruits, avocados, nuts, seeds, and different oils. So you can do it without fish.
Lorraine, when it comes to supplements, I've heard so many mixed things about it because people say, well, if you eat right, you shouldn't need supplements. And then I have other people that are pushing supplements up, like everything through a supplement. Like, what's your position on that?
Well, I always felt that way too, excuse me. But I ended up writing a book because, when I first started, I was analyzing people's diets in a computer program. I would do measurements, and all these people who ate healthy, and they would record what they ate because I put it in a computer program. I was dumbfounded. I said, they're all deficient. And then I said, well, maybe it's just because people are coming to me. I had people coming to me because they were well and they wanted to stay well. I had people who came to me that were really sick and wanted to get well. So I had a mixed population, but I reviewed the literature and I learned a lot about food. It's grown in nutrient depleted soil. It's not picked ripe. It loses in shipping, it loses in storage, it loses in cooking, and you don't absorb it oil. So when I've seen people with a very healthy diet, a lot of them still had deficiencies. So I generally recommend for most people to take a multivitamin mineral formula because it covers all bases of fish oil, or if you're allergic to fish, there's DHA oil from algae and vitamin K2, D3. That covers over 80% of the deficiencies that I see on a regular basis. And that's what prompted me to write my book. And that's how I met you, Tara. And Starbucks, I would research and write. And so you want good quality supplements. A lot of the things that are over the counter are real garbage. They're just like a sprinkle of something. So I have a free online course called Supplement Savvy where, I explain a lot of the things, what to look for, and give you access, give you access to supplements at a discount. But I am a believer in supplements because people come to me because they've had it with medication or they've had side effects from medication. And I try to do with supplements what medication did. And when I started in functional medicine, this was back in 1991 or 92 when the New England Journal of Medicine said that 1 in 3 people were seeking alternative care and they wouldn't tell their doctor about it because they'd be poo-pooed. And I made a decision then. I said, I don't want to be that kind of doctor. I want to understand this and I want to learn about this because I want to know if there's something to it or not. And that started my journey where I studied supplements. I actually started studying them when I was a kid. And I saw that studies that showed it made a difference. So sometimes people would come to me, I'd say, well, try this, or try a little vitamin C, or try a little magnesium, and then they'd come back to me and say, well, it worked. So that made me feel more comfortable. And especially like with oxidation, oxidation is us crumbling. See this wrinkling? That's what oxidation does. If you're wrinkling on the outside, you're wrinkling on the inside. And you need a lot of antioxidants to overcome that. And, you know, as you get older, your digestion isn't as good. You don't make as many enzymes. You don't make as much stomach acid. And, you know, I mean, to get the amount of antioxidants you need at least 10 servings of fruits and vegetables a day. I usually tell people 8 of vegetables, 2 of fruit. And most people don't even get the bare minimum of 5. So we really, you know, I push vegetables and then, you know, maybe 1 or 2 servings of low glycemic fruit, because if you don't have enough antioxidants, it's going to damage DNA. It's going to accelerate your aging. You're going to be slow to heal. You're going to wrinkle on the outside. And you're going to deteriorate on the inside, you know, and sometimes you just don't get enough from food. It's
Lorraine, to Tara's question, to build on what you're saying, there was actually a study done on the decline in the quality of our food supply over the last 50 years. It's drastically declined for the reasons that you mentioned about soil depletion, you know, water contamination, etc.
Yeah, no, it's thank you for, you know, confirming that, because that's what I discovered. And that's why I said to people, look, cover all bases. It's like an insurance policy, you know. And then, you know, if you're oxidizing, it's causing more inflammation. More inflammation is causing more oxidation. And it gives you everything from asthma, allergies, autoimmune, cancer, diabetes, heart attack, stroke, macular degeneration. You name it, an illness, it's inflammation and oxidation that are doing it. And then glycation. Now, this happens, this is blood sugar. So I tell people, you want to regulate your blood sugar because it manages mood, energy, weight, and your metabolic function. So the analogy I like to use when I talk about blood sugar is Black Friday at Walmart. I don't know if it's going to be the same this year, but anyway, on a regular day, you have some people going in, they get processed, and it all is well, right? And the same thing happens with blood sugar. You need carrier proteins. There are only so many doors for the sugar to get into the cells to be burned. If you overwhelm it and you have a sugar bomb, and a sugar bomb could be, you know, these healthy granola bars, or, you know, a sweet, or even juices, you'd see, I looked in the train station to try to find a healthy green juice. It had like 28 grams of sugar. That's a lot of sugar. So if you have a sugar bomb, there's no, like people at Walmart on Black Friday, there's not enough doors to get in. So they're outside causing havoc. So what happens with the sugar that can't get into the cells, it just goes all over your body and binds to protein. And the reason why I have a picture of the cataract is because that is what happens to the lens of your eye when sugar binds to it. So it changes the structure, it changes the function. And we want to avoid that, because it's not just happening in your eyes, it's happening in your brain, in your kidneys, in your nerves. And this is why diabetics have accelerated dementia and Alzheimer's. They get cataracts sooner, they get heart disease sooner, they have what they call peripheral neuropathy, where they can't feel their hands and feet because of glycation. So the way I like to show that is this slide where, you know, on the left-hand side, that's a nice, healthy brain. On the right-hand side, that's a glycated brain. That's a brain that's had sugar bombs, and it doesn't need to be having it all the time. When you have something that's not, I don't know where this is showing. If you have a whole grain, it's going to it's going to take time to digest. That's what you want. You want to be able to chew the food, and you want time to digest. It's going to raise the blood sugar. Glycemic index is how fast does the blood sugar rise, right? So sugar is 100, and, you know, very fine flours, like in bread, in chips, are going to raise the sugar a lot faster because it's already broken down. So you see, if it's not broken down at all, it raises it a little bit. If it's just broken down a little bit, it raises it a little bit more. If it's even more, a little bit more finely ground, it raises it more. But the finest ground things really give you the sugar bomb. And that wreaks havoc with your hormones, because it's going to raise insulin, because insulin is what's going to drive it into the cell so it can be burned. Insulin is a double-edged sword. You need insulin to live, but if you keep flooding your body with it because of the sugar bombs, you're going to get resistant to it, and you're also going to get a lot of that belly fat, because by the time your insulin rises to match the blood sugar is down, your blood sugar drops, then it's a stressor for your body. The cortisol will go up, and cortisol makes you fat, flabby, flaky, foggy, fatigued, forgetful. Cortisol breaks down muscle, it breaks down bone, it raises blood pressure, it raises blood sugar, it deteriorates your muscles, it does a lot of harm, and that also gives you that belly fat. So that's what this graph is. It's the ups and downs, and it changes your mood, changes your energy, it changes your weight. So that's why we want to really watch the sugar content and have less processed foods. I'm not saying never.
Question.
Yeah.
Is low sugar level as bad as high sugar level? Is there an issue when your sugar level is really low?
Yes, because your brain, so your brain and your heart survive on the sugar, your brain much more so. So diabetics, if they overdose on insulin, they get hypoglycemic, and you can have, seizures and strokes, and it damages your brain. You need, your brain is always working. You need constant, it needs to be fed constantly. So that's why you need a good, strong heart to pump your nutrients to the brain. You need open arteries to get to nutrient in the brain, and you need your brain lives on glucose or ketones. So yes, hypoglycemia, if it's low enough to become symptomatic, where, people they get lightheaded, they get hangry. Yeah, it can be very problematic. Does that answer your question?
I wish you were around when my daughter was 9, who's 25 now, and was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, because no one could explain this to me the way you just did.
Oh, well,
I didn't understand what was going on with her, and
Yeah.
I was her caregiver, and it's just, to understand it this simply is just wonderful.
Well, it's scary, and that's why I like pictures too, and people, once they experience it, they know, because when we do our elimination and detoxification diet, they get a little bit of withdrawal first, the first few days, and then it's like magic happens. The mental fog is gone, the aches and pains are gone, the reflux is gone, they have energy, they sleep better. It's like renewal, because your body can't handle all this constant feeding of processed foods that are just, it can't handle the load. It can't handle the load. If you have something that it's going to take a little bit of time to digest, you can handle it. It's a regular day at Walmart versus a Black Friday where there's all chaos. So I wanted to talk about the blue zones. The blue zones were, someone went and studied, and they wrote a book about it. This has been around for a long time. Centurions, and these are places like Okinawa, Sardinia, Loma Linda, California. There are more of them. So they studied people who lived past 100, and they all had the same characteristics. So I put it into a little graphic here, and I'm only, because we're limited in time, I'm going to really concentrate mostly on the first 3. Move naturally, 80% full, meaning don't stuff yourself. Have a plant slant. It doesn't mean you have to be vegetarian. Downshift, which is relaxation. We talked a little bit before we formally started about purpose, because all these people had purpose. They had a reason to get up in the morning. They had a reason, they had a sense of belonging. They had community, they had support. I like this one, wine at 5. Obviously, they didn't have it in Loma Linda, so it's not absolutely essential, but a little bit. What we have to understand is that the amount of wine that they had, my husband is European, and he brought me these European glasses, and it's a smidgen. I mean, 5 ounces. Most of our pours, if we go out to a bar or a restaurant, are about more than almost double that. Finding the right tribe. And that's why having a group like this is so important. And it was so nice to see some people that I haven't seen in a long time. So you're my tribe, we're all interested in the same thing. We're supportive of each other. We help each other. We want to live healthy, happy, with a sense of purpose. And we love our work, and we love our community. And then putting loved ones first. So these are the 9 habits that were there throughout all of the blue zones. And this is really, it's simple. That's why I want to make sure people know it's not that hard. And if you know, some people want to take notes or they like to see things written. I made a handout that has a lot of the principles in it. If you want to sign up for it, just go to howtoliveyounger.com/magnificent to how to go from miserable to magnificent, because you can transform your life. Really, I've seen it happen in as short as 2 weeks, and I've seen it happen, you know, a little bit longer. Any questions so far? So I want to talk a little bit about moving naturally. Obviously, throughout the pandemic, we're all on our Zooms. There's not as much natural movement in some people's lives. And movement of any kind is really important. It increases BDNF. That's called the brain-derived neurotropic factors. It's a fancy word for saying it's the juice and the sauce that lets your nerves regrow and regenerate. Because, you know, we used to think that the brain can't regenerate, but it does. It does. If you give it the right stuff. Moving, I mean, exercise, I prescribe exercise because it can turn around a lot that ails you. It builds bone, it strengthens muscles, it improves heart and lung function. And people forget about the lungs. You know, there was some studies that said, you know, we always talk about heart disease being probably one of the #1 killers, and that, you know, people forget about the lungs, but it has a higher, if you have a lot of lung dysfunction, you would have a greater mortality than if you had heart dysfunction. And the way to improve lung function is high intensity interval training. It really helps. But when you have strong bones and muscles, it reduces the risk of falls and fractures. And that's what happens when you get older, you get frail. And when somebody breaks their bone when they're a lot older and they don't have time to put all this into play, if they go in a nursing home, some of them never come out.
Does yoga help because of the
Yoga
deep
does
breathing?
help. Yoga does help. It does a lot. Sometimes it depends on the style of yoga. You can do a yoga that's aerobic. You can do a yoga that's more strengthening. You can do one that's balanced for both. But I generally tell people to do a variety of things. And I'll show you on the next slide. But yoga is very helpful. And when I prescribe exercise, I prescribe frequency, intensity, and time. And that all depends, a minimum of 5 days a week. You got to do something. And even if you break it up into small intervals, the New York Times put out something called the 6-minute workout to do between your Zoom calls. You know, some of these things were studied. And if you did 3 sessions of the 6-minute workout, it's like an hour workout. Or I used the 7-minute workout. That was the original study that showed that's a mix of high intensity interval training with using your own body weight to help strengthen you. And it's equivalent to an hour's worth of exercise. So minimum of exercise is frequency, the intensity, it depends upon your goals. You know, so you don't always have to be too intense. And that's a double-edged sword, because when you're too intense, you raise your cortisol, and the cortisol has the opposite effect. It breaks you down. And then time, if you want to just maintain, it's minimum 20 minutes. If you want to lose weight, you got to go over 40 minutes. So that's frequency, intensity, time is always going to be dependent upon what your goals are. And I have a whole chapter in my book about that. But I use the be safe as an acronym for balance. You always need to have some balance, because that's the first thing that goes. When I do anti-aging physicals, I used to test people's balance, and they would be standing on their one leg, you know, with their eyes open, and they say, I could do this all day. But when you have them close their eyes, boom, they topple over, because we forget about how much vision plays into balance. And usually what happens when people get older, in the middle of the night, you trip over something, you don't have that visual, you fall over. And that's the first thing that goes. So always work on balance. That's why I like yoga, tennis, biking, things where you have to change positions. Endurance is aerobics. That's extremely important for heart and lung function. Strength, you can use weights or you can use your own muscle mass. I mean, I do sometimes push-ups against the wall, or you do squats, but I always recommend having a variety, and then flexibility, because, you know, when I used to see athletes, you know, I saw bodybuilders, they would tear muscles because they were just too tight. They didn't have the flexibility. Or I would see runners who were great aerobically, but they had no upper body strength. And then they had, you know, shin splints and different kinds of fractures. So if you balance, if you do a variety, then you're well balanced. I mean, life is all about balance. Any questions there? And then exercising your brain, we forget that the brain needs stimulation. And I know I have a lot of people tell me, oh, I do crossword puzzles every day, but then you're only going to be good at crossword puzzles. Your brain wants something novel, like read something different, learn how to dance, because dance puts in, you know, your brain has to work with your body, and you have to learn moves, and you have to synchronize with someone else. So you're firing off a lot of different parts of your brain. The same thing with a musical instrument. If you've never played before, that's something novel for your brain. You're stimulating it, or learning a new language. So keeping your brain active is as important as keeping your body active. You know, we were talking about people who retire early. After a while, everything kind of starts going. It's blah, you know, they have no purpose. They're not really motivated to learn anything or change anything. But I know for myself, I want to always be constantly learning and growing, because that's what's going to keep my brain young. Any questions there? And then there's plant slant. So Michael Pollan said it better: eat food, not too much, mostly plants. You don't have to be vegan or vegetarian to benefit, but we talked a lot about anti-inflammatory diets and you know, how to get enough antioxidants. The best thing, these are mostly anti-inflammatory, and they've got antioxidants. And try to eat every color in the rainbow, because every color has a different phytonutrient with different antioxidants in them. So sometimes it's easier to get people to add something in than to take something away, because some people say, don't take away my bread. And that's not bad for everybody, but plants, eating veggies, oh, that's the best thing you can do for yourself. So a healthy recipe is healthy fats, no sugar or low sugar. If someone asks me, what do you look for? I try to stay under 5 grams. So that if I look at these yogurts, and I buy a lot of the dairy-free yogurts, because dairy tends to, well, it's inflammatory and tends to make me congested. But I try to buy the plain, and then I flavored it up myself, because some of them have 12 to 20 grams of sugar in them. And you think you're eating something healthy. Same thing with granola bars. So try to start looking at the labels for the added sugars. You know, 5 is really what I look for, but I won't go over 10. If it's, I looked in that train station for something healthy, and I said, oh, green juice, it should be good. But 28 grams of sugar, that would have been a sugar bomb for my brain. And I said, no. I found nuts, which was good. We talked a lot about plants, but toxins are a big thing, and we're exposed to it all the time. Plastics, I never heat in plastic. I eat organic, because the herbicides and pesticides mess up your hormonal system, your immune system, and your nervous system. And I started looking at personal care products. So you don't want parabens, phthalates, benzene. There's a long list. So I would say do the best you can. You're not going to do all of this at once. So if you start with having clean water and a few things, we call them the dirty dozen. Environmental working group tests fruits and vegetables, and they'll list the dirty dozen that have the most herbicides and pesticides, and then the clean 15 that don't. At least eat the dirty dozen organic, don't worry about the rest. And then, you know, the kind of fats that you eat, and the decreasing inflammation and oxidation is going to keep your arteries open and clear to get to all the parts that it needs. So the recipe for disaster, you know, during the pandemic, so many people had trouble sleeping. Sleep is so important because during sleep, your deep sleep has pulsations in your cerebrospinal fluid, and it actually washes your brain. It's been shown to wash away Alzheimer's plaques. Deep sleep is extremely important, and that's also where you make growth hormone, and growth hormone allows you to regenerate and repair. The REM sleep helps with memory and the deep sleep. So you need all the stages of sleep. And I have lots of tricks on how to improve sleep, but this is a lecture in and of itself, and I have a whole course on that. But one other
Question.
yeah.
Question for you. Well, two questions. One was previous to the, eating plant-based, removing the sugars, I should say. How do you adjust your palate? Because that impacts taste, right? A lot of when you go from things that are sweet or have some sugar in there, you have to make a drastic adjustment to taste. So that's my first question. How do you move from, understanding and adjusting to taste? And then the second part is, my entire life, I've slept 3 to 4 hours. And I know that's everything says it's bad, but I just can't seem to sleep longer. I've tried every single thing in my life, and I'm pretty much set around 4 hours and I'm awake. So if you could talk to that a little bit, that would be helpful.
All right. In terms of changing your palate, there's one of two ways. You can, decrease gradually. So start having less sugar. I need to get results from my patients fast. So I tell them I like to pull the Band-Aid off quickly. We give them a week to kind of prepare their mind and bodies for, like, I'm going to take away all your sugars. I'm going to take away all your grains. And you know what everybody says to me? First 2 days, tough. And then after that, they say, I don't have any cravings. I just did a detox. I'm in the process of doing a detox. That's why I'm, a little congested, because I do this twice a year at least. And I have to say, when I had some strawberries, they tasted so good. Most of the time we're eating the food so fast, we don't even taste it. But once you remove something, and I use the analogy, it's like being in a room with a bad smell. After a while, you don't smell it anymore because it goes on receptor. You need receptors to take something to give you your being able to register what's happening, right? But once they're flooded, it's kind of like listening to a nagging voice. Your brain turns it off. You stop responding, right? So once you're in a room with a bad smell, you stop smelling it. But once you leave that room, the receptors clear. So taking away the sugar, taking away too much salt, the receptors clear. And then when you go back in, it's like, whoa, this tastes too sweet. This is too salty. So it's a matter of, expectation too. So, but everybody tells me they get rid of their cravings when they're away from it. And some people have a true addiction. Sugar is as addictive as cocaine. They did studies with that. It's as addictive as cocaine. So some people can have some once in a while, and other people, it's like alcohol to an alcoholic. So you almost have to start to learn your body and how you respond. And the second question was sleep. There's a range that's been proven to be best 6 to 8 hours. Now, a lot of it depends upon what wakes you up. Are you waking up because you have something on your mind? Are you waking up because you have pain? Are you waking up because you're, having hot flashes or night sweats? Are you waking up? Sometimes food keeps you awake. I had to tell my husband, stop drinking mint tea at night because mint is stimulating. And he stopped drinking the mint tea at night, and then he slept more.
I don't have, as soon as I reach 3 to 4 hours of sleep, my eyes open. I don't know. I don't particularly need to eat, go to bathroom, like it just opens.
What I would try is either a long-acting melatonin. It takes a little bit more. I mean, I can do another lecture down the road on sleep, or I have a course online, but I would do something to to calm your nervous system down before you go to bed, like I think a technique called heart math. I'll go into that in a little bit. Some things to quiet you down, decrease the blue light. I use long-acting melatonin a lot, and sometimes L-theanine for journaling, because those things have really helped people prolong their sleep. And deep sleep has, I just did an experiment, because I have some of my patients, they love these wearables, and they report to me all their data. So there's something called an alpha stim that puts you in a state with alpha brain waves that enables deep sleep. So I have, I also wrote a blog, so you can Google the blog. It's just that I want to be able to get to everything. And sleep, it's on layering. What is the underlying cause? But the main things would be have a good sleep routine, dark, cool, quiet room, do something relaxing before, do a brain dump, like journal what's on your mind, because people wake up because, oh, did I think about that? And you know what? If you write it down, you train your brain to say, I don't need to get up because I know I wrote it down. And then I try things like melatonin, could be magnesium or L-theanine, because these are the things that they're so benign, it doesn't interact with anything. But you know, I could get into other things as well, but those are the main things that I start people with.
Thank you.
Can I make a comment about that,
Sure.
Lorraine?
Yeah.
Well, concerning that sleep, I find myself that for as long as I can remember, 4 to 5 hours for me is more than enough. And it's not like at the end of the day I feel tired or that I don't perform as well as I could. That's just my body, my cycle. I think that 4 or 5 hours to me, it's perfectly fine.
There are outliers, and for some it probably is perfectly fine. I can only report to you the data about what happens during deep sleep. Now, if somebody started measuring, if you're healthy, you think clearly, you're not, there's always outliers. Nobody always fits into the box. So it may be okay for you. It's just that it'd be interesting to do a study to see how much in each stage you're at, because you need to get through each stage, and it takes about 90 minutes to get through all 4 stages of sleep. And you need REM sleep for your memory, and you need deep sleep for your hormones and for cleaning your brain. So if those things are happening within 4 hours or 5 hours, it's fine. We can't change people's physiology. If you were having issues, then I'd be more worried.
The other thing that I wanted to comment on, and I see that he's no longer here, but Paul, I was feeling very upbeat until I heard Paul talk about the people that he knew that retired and died, because it just so happens that after 46 years, I'm a CPA, and I know Marcella, and she probably remembers me from some of the meetings that I've been to that she has hosted. I'm also a member of the advisory board of Lakeland. But last year, I worked through the tax season of 2019, which was during 2020 at home all the time, because we really did not go to the office. And after that, I said, you know what, 46 years, I think is long enough for me. I think I'm going to call it quits. And I retired. And I got to tell you that I've been retired over a year now, and I keep myself fairly busy, not necessarily with work, but my wife is still working. So I take over a lot of the things around the house. And I also plan a lot of vacations. Right now, we have at least 4 vacations coming up in the next 4 months or so. So I think that I'm enjoying life a little bit more than most people would. And I've heard the stories about people retiring and dropping dead in 6 months. I also have a longevity issue. Unfortunately, my dad passed away at 80, but my mother is going to be 101 in January, God willing. So, until 5 years ago, she used to cook and clean and do everything else. Of course, now, her legs fail, her eyesight, she's She's got macular degeneration. So, you know, the past few years, it's very fortunate that my sister has been able to take over, lives with her, and treats her as if she was a queen. Nothing. She is not missing anything, and
Yeah.
has it on a very good diet.
Yeah, well, some people retire and they've always put too much into their job, and that was their entire identity. And these are the people that don't do well. But you're planning vacation, that's using your brain, going to a new situation, a new place. That's using your brain. That's something stimulating. You know, there's a lot that goes into that. So it's the people that retire and they get into routine and they're bored. That's the danger, is the boredom.
Well, also, even though I do not have that day-to-day responsibility, having been one of the owners of the firm, not having that responsibility doesn't take me away from clients that have been clients of mine for 30 or 40 years. They still call me. They have my cell phone. Sometimes they call and apologize for calling me. I say, you don't have to apologize. If there's anything that I can help you with, I will be happy. I will be happy to help you. So please feel free to call me. And many times, for instance, yesterday, a client sent me a copy of the tax return that he just got from the firm. He wanted me to look at it because he felt more comfortable if I just gave him the blessing. So I did.
See, that's good. It's keeping you engaged. You have a purpose, but you don't have the same pressures of constant. I mean, my husband and I went to Florida last year and we met up with some people. There's a group of my friends that all retired in their 50s and they're in their 70s now. And there's from 50 to 70, they're still doing the same thing. And they were, you know, it almost felt dull. What could I say? You know, like, how many books can you read? How many, you know, luncheons can you go to? You know, it's getting involved in something and having your sense of purpose. There's good retirement and there's not so good retirement.
I think also too, what Joseph was saying was, sounds like he was really stressed, right? Which too much stress isn't good for you, right? So there's like you said, there's a balance of everything, right? Like not too much stress. I mean, you can't avoid stress completely, but if you can manage to it and do better and then stay active, you know, as you reduce your stress. Sounds like
I know when I retire from my practice, because, you know, at a certain point that'll happen, I'm still going to write, I'm going to teach, I'm going to speak, I'm going to, you know, I'm going to still keep reading and learning. You know, when I write my blogs on the weekends, I sometimes spend about 4 hours. I'll research the literature. I say, what's new with this topic? You know, somebody will come in, like the patient who said to me, oh, I have an aura ring and I spend almost all my time in REM sleep and hardly any deep sleep. And I wake up and I'm exhausted. Well, I had to go through a lot to figure out, like, what else can I do to help her with deep sleep? And so that she could feel more rested in the time that she was sleeping. So there's good sleep and there's not so good sleep, you know, there's disrupted sleep, and there's, as long as you go through those stages, you get to do, your body gets to do what it needs to do. That's its time for repair. And so sleep, doing the best you can to stay away from toxins, moving, getting plenty of fruits and vegetables in every color of the rainbow. That's a recipe for health. These are pretty simple things. You know, you just start adding things one at a time. Don't overwhelm yourself. And so the anti-aging process is having the fats that flow, you know, olives, fish, nuts, seeds, olives, avocados, and any of their oils. Complex, colorful carbohydrates. You want something that you can chew, and that's going to release its sugar slowly and not high glycemic. You know, tropical fruits are high glycemic. So if you're going to have tropical fruits, bananas, papaya, melons, mangoes, things like that, they're higher in sugar. So have less of those than you would of, you know, strawberries or berries or apples or pears. You know, choose lean protein. That saturated fat's not great. You know, my husband and I went out for dinner one night, and he's allergic to dairy, and it seems that everything on the menu except for the steak had dairy in it. So they said it was 12 ounces. I'm like, that's like 4 meals for me. So we shared it with a salad. So lean protein is important. You just be mindful of the saturated fats, but of all things that are the worst, like if you have clean grass-fed beef, it's actually fine because they eat grass, which is mostly omega-3. So their fat is mostly omega-3. So it's how things were raised. But the worst for our bodies are what we did to food: trans fats, saturated fats, hydrogenated oils. These were used as to preserve the food. It doesn't, because fats go rancid fast. So these don't. You know, somebody told me in an experiment where they put a stick of margarine out on a shelf. It never grew mold. You know, it never deteriorated. I mean, that there's something to be said about that. It's like plastic food. It had no nutritional value. Even mold didn't want it, you know? So these are the things to avoid, and to try to avoid the high glycemic index foods. And if you're gonna have them, have a smaller amount, and mix it with a protein or a fat. Whenever you have something with a lot of sugar or starch, because starch is sugar just bound together by one little, it's like a string of pearls. That thing between the pearls gets cut immediately as soon as you put it in your mouth. Amylase makes the starch into sugar like that. And then, you know, timing. So take your time when you eat. And then 80% full. I mean, now the whole rage is intermittent fasting and the fasting mimicking diet and calorie restriction. Well, calorie restriction was the biggest anti-aging technique, but it's not so sexy. So some people do what they call periodic fasting, which could be 5 days eat, you know, normally 2 days semi-fast. A fast could be 500 to 700 calories. So it doesn't have to be complete fast, just water. So there's a 5-2, there's a 12-hour fast. The more popular one is the 16 hours of fast and 8 hours of eating within an 8-hour window. And people seem to feel like that enables them to maintain their weight and that they don't overeat, because during the fasting period, you do a lot of healing. And then there's the fasting mimicking diet that was studied by Victor Longo in California and Berkeley. And what they did is they created, I should have shown you the box because I did it. Everything I try everything on myself. So they have 5 days of meals that are, it's very small. You have a box this big and that's 5 days of meals. But when you do 5 days, 3 months in a row, it decreased inflammation, it decreased blood sugar, it decreased hemoglobin A1C, it changed your metabolism, people lost weight. But the biggest thing that they found is that there was something called autophagy, where you clean out old dead cells. It's like going like spring cleaning, because these old dead cells that hang out in your body cause inflammation, right? So it cleans out old dead cells, but it makes room for the new stem cells. And they've actually shown stem cells, which is what rejuvenates you. So that fasting mimicking diet has a lot of studies behind it, a lot of proof behind it. And, this is what the centenarians know. Just don't stuff yourself, because all of that food it's got to go somewhere. It's going to get stored in your belly, and the belly fat is going to release inflammatory cytokines, and cytokines are signaling molecules. So being fat makes you fat and makes you inflamed. And then the last but not least is, the downshifting or stressing less. And, I'm known for hormones, but what I tell people, if you manage your stress, it manages the other hormones. And there are a lot of ways, 22 ways. There's more than 22 ways, but I list 22 ways. And the reason why I list this slide is because I always ask people, what do you do to manage your stress? They say, oh, I read, I do yoga, I meditate. But you can't do those things throughout your day. You're in a heated meeting, there's a lot of tension around. You need a technique for you to stay centered and clear. And the best and easiest free technique is your breath. And if you breathe deep and slow, it balances your nervous system. When your nervous system is balanced, you're more intuitive, you're more creative, you make better decisions. It decreases anxiety, decreases depression. So your breath deep and slow. When you breathe in deep, have your belly expand, and when you breathe out slowly, you know, slow it down and contract your stomach. And there's what they call a box breath, five counts in, hold it for a second, 7 counts out, hold it for a second, and keep doing that. And you'll see it will transform. But my favorite technique is heart math. And what heart math does is it combines the breath with gratitude. And this, I'm going to tell you how old I am now, not really, but I studied heart math when it was on cassette tapes. Like, who sees a cassette tape these days? No, but there were over 200 studies done on this. It was used for CEOs and high performance athletes. And the technique is breathing deep and slow, focusing on your heart, and focusing on something, someone, someplace you're grateful for, that it just melts your heart. And I hook people up to a biofeedback machine, and you see the difference, because I had somebody who is, there's more nerves from your heart to your brain than from your brain to your heart. And when I had people hooked up and they were meditators, they said, just bring it on, I'll show you. You could see the graph, and it was going in like a sine curve that goes up and down and represents your nerves, but it was a little choppy. And then a lot of people have to choose a place for their dog, because as much as we love our children or our spouses, something will creep in and that they did that irritated you. So I had her think about her pet. And as she was doing that, you could see her whole body just relax. And the sine wave was beautiful and smooth. And that's heart rate variability. That's the balance of the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system, the fight or flight, or the rest, digest, reproduce, regenerate. And that is a beautiful place to be. So that could be done anytime, anywhere, with anyone. So pick a few of these things. You need a lot of tools in your toolbox. And just like you were saying, Sandra, that sometimes you can't unwind. Sometimes just like a little aromatherapy, a little lavender oil at night can be very relaxing. Making sure your room is dark, being mindful, meditation, being out in nature. There's a lot of different ways, but always find some time in your day for some relaxation. Your nervous system needs to just dial down a bit. So choose a few of them and experiment with some, because you'll find that some work better for you than others, and some you enjoy more than others, and some are, you're going to find you might like some other of these things on the list. Any questions there? And then balancing your hormones. If you lower cortisol, which has a lot to do with stress and blood sugar, and you lower insulin, which has a lot to do with your diet, then you don't need these other things. Most of the time, these two hormones at the top can be controlled by your lifestyle. I have people who don't need the other hormones, but then I have people who are desperate. You know, a menopausal woman with hot flashes, somebody with bad PMS or polycystic ovaries, or, you know, men with andropause, women who don't make enough progesterone, so they're anxious, irritable, bleeding, spotting, have cysts. Other people with thyroid disorders. Thyroid is a very, very sensitive organ. It's like the canary in the coal mine. It's going to be the first one to have damage. So you control the top two, you don't need the other two. And that's always my goal with people. And that's why before I give anybody any hormones, I have them do the detoxification, elimination, change their diet, give them some supplements. And I'd say a good percentage then don't need me for a hormone replacement. But not, you know, it's there, and there are safe, effective, more natural ways to replace hormones if you need them. But my goal is to have you not need them. And this is, you know, tools for a healthy life. Eat healthy, drink pure water. That's really important. Now, water is filthy. It's got microplastics in it. It has pharmaceuticals in it. It's got heavy metals. It has, you know, runoff from your herbicides and pesticides. So drinking pure water is important because our body is mostly water. Move often, and as I said, it doesn't have to be in one big chunk. Because if you try to say I have to exercise for an hour, that hour is going to loom over you, and you're going to say, where am I going to find that time? So if you did a few 5 or 6 minute stints throughout the day, hey, that's good. Sleep enough, and as we discussed, enough might be different for others. The average where the studies were done were 6 to 8, and thinking positive, because your thoughts produce feelings in your body, and those feelings direct your actions, and your actions direct your results, and results bring you more of the same. So thinking positive makes a huge difference. And speak lovingly. I mean, there's too much hatred out there right now, and anger, and just one kind word can make your day and somebody else's day. And I had this conversation with pretty famous doctor. We were on a webinar together, and we talked about how just finding something, even if somebody you don't like, you can always find something nice to say, and it changes the dynamic. You can sense when you're with somebody that's negative or doesn't feel right towards you. These things can be shifted. They can be shifted by how you speak and how you present yourself. We talked a lot about learning and growing, and that should happen even throughout life, through even retirement, and to create community and support. And that's why I'm so grateful for all of you to put this together, and for me to have been able to connect with some people that I haven't seen in a while, and even some new people. And, I can't stress enough to breathe deep and slow. So that's basically what I have to say about aging healthy and easily and naturally, and I'm open for any other questions.
Okay.
Dr. Lorraine Maita, thank you very, very much.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
This
Yeah.
was absolutely wonderful.
I hope you got what you needed out of it, and any feedback is helpful for me. I do a lot of speaking, and I like the interaction much better. I like connecting with people.
And Joe, you started a new chapter. You didn't retire, you just refired, started again.
Actually, you may be right. I started a new chapter, and I got to tell you, Dr. Maita, that among the things that I accomplished after I retired and during the pandemic year, the infamous pandemic year that we're stuck at home for weeks at a time, I follow some of your advice without even knowing it. I changed my eating habits quite a bit. I eat a lot more fruits and vegetables. I exercise every single day, and I lost 35 pounds. I would love to lose another 20 or so. Thank you. I would love to lose another 20 or so, but after you get to a point, you could walk all day long in the treadmill, and you could eat all the vegetables you want, but you're going to stay there at a plateau, and I guess eventually I'll drop again.
Great, good for you. I just got off the phone when doing a telehealth visit with somebody who's 76, and he decided he's going to still do some consulting, And he said, when days he's busy, he's happy, he's got a lot of energy. Then other days he's sitting at home, it's like, oh, I'm bored, I'm tired, I want to do.
That's what I plan to do is that I'll still do some consulting, because as I said before, I have clients that have been with me for 35 and 40 years, and they're not going to let me go. They're not going to let me go.
Good. So, well, that's just going to keep you young.
I hope so.
Young and healthy. Well, I thank all of you for your attention and your interaction and the great questions. Really, I appreciate that.
Thank you for the presentation. It was excellent. We appreciate it.